This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Leicester City 3, Liverpool 1. Another capitulation from the Reds, leaving their top four hopes in tatters. Theo, what did you make of that?
It was a bit of a car crash, really, wasn't it? Liverpool, they were in control for most of the game, and then, as we saw against Manchester City last week, they concede one and they just fall apart. It doesn't matter who's in that defence. This is what is happening in recent weeks. That a team lacking all confidence, and you just wonder when they're going to turn this form around. If they don't score early in games, they don't look like they're going to score. Granted, they got a fantastic goal from Mohamed Salah. It was a brilliant assist from Roberto Firmino. But up until that point, you're still looking at it going, where's this goal going to come from? Because they're just meandering through. They couldn't really break Leicester down. They couldn't really put a shot on and threaten Kasper Schmeichel. Leicester defending well. But then it's just what we've seen from them before. Just as it looks like they're going to get another good away win, they're going to keep a clean sheet. Some controversy with VAR, another keeper mistake, defensive mishap, and then just defence all over the place for the third goal. You'd like to say it's a surprise, but even though they're the Premier League champions, this has been what we've been seeing for the past 6 weeks, and it's just unrecognisable from the team that dominated and destroyed everything that was before them only a year ago.
We'll go through it then chronologically. So some debate with VAR again. It's not the first time that's happened to Liverpool this season, but it all stems initially from a clumsy challenge from Thiago just outside the box. It's not the first time we've seen that from him, is it, this year?
No, it's not. Obviously, tackling's not his strength. It's not his game. It's one why you don't want to see him as the number 6, because I think Liverpool were definitely lacking something when he is in that position. It would have been fine in Germany when you're playing for Bayern Munich and you're expecting to beat teams 3-4-0 most weekends, but it doesn't work in the Premier League, and it certainly doesn't work against teams that are at the top of the table. For whatever reason, Thiago, he just keeps making these silly challenges, and maybe it's getting used to the pace of English football, but you think for a player of his quality, he'd have a bit more sense about him, because he's getting bookings and then he's putting in these late lunges or whatever, putting his leg in. You just expect a bit more maturity from him. VAR, it's one of those where you look at it and you think it's outside the box. The referee said it's outside the box, and VAR is supposed to be the clear and obvious. But even looking at that replay, when you see the pictures on screen, you don't have a clue which way it's going to be given. It's not clear and obvious at all, and it just takes the fun out of it. It's the exact same for the actual goal itself. But yeah, Thiago, he needs to learn to tackle. Maybe that's something they need to do on Melwood. Obviously, he didn't start the game. AXA, Kirkby Training Centre, they've changed now, haven't they? But yeah, it's obviously why James Milner started the game. Liverpool lacking that leadership in midfield with Henderson at centre-back. And for Thiago, it's just still not quite happened for him yet.
The second goal then, come within a matter of minutes after the first. Mix up between Kabak on his debut and Alisson, who otherwise it looked like he'd back to his normal self today. But what did you make of that? Who was at fault for you there?
I think Kabak's more at fault for it than the goalkeeper, but it is communication as well. Like, if Alisson's coming off his line and he's looking to clear that, as he does so often, you want him screaming to get out the way. And Kabak was very hesitant, wasn't he? He was like wanting to get out the way, but he was still lunging into him. I'm not really sure which one of them got the touch to push it towards Vardy, but it's just dopiness from them. Like, for so long we've seen Alisson not make mistakes, and now he's gifted 3-4 goals in a couple of games, and it's not because he's become a bad goalkeeper overnight. It's because Liverpool have no confidence at the moment, and the defence changes so often that's killed confidence too. You don't have that consistency in your back line, then this is what's going to happen. Teams are going to make mistakes. Your keeper's not going to have faith in the players in front of him. And when you've gone from having Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez in front of you to a centre midfielder and someone making his Premier League debut, it was always going to be a tough one. But yeah, it's just, like I said, for the first goal, it's not a surprise, is it? When you see mistakes now, the same as it's not a surprise when you see VAR controversy. It's just one of those where Liverpool need to cut it out the game sooner rather than later.
As you say there, that was the 16th different centre-back partnership for Liverpool this season. That mistake looked like two players who had never played together until today. we won't go too much into the third goal. Liverpool, they'd capitulated by then, and it is all too easy. To be honest, the way they walked through, and Kabak couldn't quite get back. But in terms of his overall performance today, what did you make of Kabak?
I thought he struggled a little bit. Granted, he didn't put money a foot wrong during the first majority of the game, first half, first hour or so. But Leicester still tried to get him behind him with Jamie Vardy, and there were a couple of instances where he did get in behind them. He looks like he lacks a bit of pace for Premier League football, which I think was clear for the third goal. He's obviously got a silly booking himself as well, so maybe that was part of his thinking why he didn't make more of an effort on Harvey Barnes, because he couldn't get himself sent off. But it's obviously going to be an adjustment for him. Like, if you sign a centre back and you put them in a team that is high on confidence, playing well, or you've got Virgil van Dijk alongside them, you don't have any doubt about how they'll settle in. But if it's a team without Virgil van Dijk, when you don't know who the centre back partner's back's going to be every single week, and they're shipping goals and they just look unrecognisable like this, it's going to be hard for any player. Like, if it was Nat Phillips, Reece Williams, Ben Davis, mistakes will still creep in. They'll still be lacking confidence. So it's not one where you can really blame him to that extent. But it's still, you can see why he's only on loan with this view to buy. He's certainly someone that they were a little unsure about, and they wanted him to convince them that he was the answer to these centre-back problems. And on the basis of the first 90 minutes, he's got to hope that he doesn't have many more 90 minutes like that. Not going to judge him too early, but yeah, it wasn't the best start, was it?
No, not at all. We'll certainly be hoping that it's only up from here. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. I mean, there was one moment of brilliance. It's not going to get the attention it deserves because of the outcome, what happened after. But there was a reminiscent of the Newcastle goal from last season. Lovely bit of work from Firmino, and it was a fantastic finish from Salah, who is having a great individual season, whatever might be happening with the team.
It's an interesting one with Salah because he's still the leading goal scorer in the division quite comfortably. And even though Liverpool are lacking form, confidence, and he's not getting the chances as a result, he's still finding a way to score goals. And there was a few instances in this one where his touch has been too heavy, he's overhit a pass, and it's not quite happening for him. But then he goes and puts in a finish like that into the top corner. And as soon as Firmino tried that flick, it's like almost you're watching it in slow motion going, please hit the back of the net, because the assist was something special and the finish was justifying of it. It was a great piece of skill from Firmino. And it's when he's not been at his best, has he, this season, you need those moments of magic from him. And it's just a shame that we're talking about it as meaning nothing after this result, when if that had been a 1-0 victory, then that's a game that could potentially put Liverpool back onto the path to greatness or whatever. And it's a beautiful piece of skill to win a game. But it's what Firmino's got in his locker. It's what Salah's got in his locker. They just need to do it more consistently. And at the moment, Liverpool aren't getting that out of them.
We did touch on Alisson. Is there a concern there, or do you think it's purely just lack of confidence given what happened in the last game and then the mix-up with Kabak today? Do you think it's anything to be worried about with him, or just a patch of form?
I think it's a bit harsh putting it on his door today, just because it's what he does. Like, the players who have played with him for 2-3 years know he races off his line. They know he clears everything. And that more times than not, he gets it and he does it well. Like, there was one earlier in the game when he came out and he kneed it, and it was the perfect weight on this kneed pass to Trent Alexander-Arnold. That shows the ability he's got when he comes off his line. And it's just poor communication with a player he's not played with before. Obviously, minutes later, he made that fantastic save, didn't he, from Vardy? So it's not as though he's having stinkers again, like week in, week out. It's just one of these moments where he's not really had the communication. But then it is how he plays his game, how Liverpool play the game. And at the moment, they don't really have the players that suit it. We know they like to pass it out from the back, and you need confidence in the players in front of you to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're going to come under pressure. You're going to make mistakes, and he's not going to have that. Like, Jordan Henderson can pass, but he's a central midfielder playing in defence. Fabinho, central midfielder. Reece Williams is a youngster. Nat Phillips is a youngster. Kabak's first time he's played with them, and we know the fullbacks are out of form. You need consistency as a backline. It's why Liverpool was so good for 2 years, 3 years, because the back four was unchanged. Whenever we do a team selector, it'd be usual suspects in defence, in goal. When they're all fit, you know who starts. And Liverpool just haven't had that this season. And when they've been training so hard and had that consistency, it's like second nature to them. This year, they've not had that, so they can't build these relations on the pitch. And they're not even getting the training time as well because there's so many games. You can't just sit on it and work for it. I know they've had the week off this week where they could have trained on it a bit more, but it takes time. It's a gradual process. And when there's so much pressure on them at the moment, because they're losing games, because they're making silly mistakes, because of the injuries, the title race just falling apart, it's going to get worse for them. And it's one where you can't even say it needs a big wake-up moment from Jurgen Klopp, a crisis meeting or whatever, because this is now a run of games that's continuing. We thought they'd turn the corner with the Tottenham and West Ham. Clearly, it runs deeper than that. But it's more than one goalkeeper having a bad run of form. This is the whole team now.
Just finally then, in the last 24 hours, we've had news and injuries to James Milner, who's gone off today on the 16th minute. Ben Davies, who Klopp said before the game picked up a knock in training. Fabinho, who he confirmed yesterday was out with an injury in training as well. And before the game, Divock Origi, he's facing an extended period on the sidelines. Obviously, Minamino has just been sent out on loan, one that probably wouldn't have happened if Origi had been injured a few weeks earlier. Liverpool can finish the weekend in 7th if results go against them. How concerned are you with the injuries and the form? Not the title race, I think it's fair to say, is over, but now just finishing in the top 4.
It's beginning to be a cause for concern, yes, but it's not as though it's Liverpool that are the only team affected. Other teams are equally inconsistent, dropping points when you wouldn't expect them to. But Liverpool are feeling the pinch. These injuries are stacking up. And I think it stings a bit more because they coped with it reasonably well for 2 months, didn't they? When Van Dijk first broke down, they were still winning games. They were still top of the table a month, 6 weeks ago. And it looked like, Liverpool is so good that they can cope with it. Clearly, they can't. And there's nothing they can do about that now. They can't complain. They've just got to deal with the hand they've been dealt. And it's just a brutally unfair one. But they have still got a lot of talented players like Origi. If he's ruled out, it's not a huge miss because he's just an option off the bench. He's never going to be a starter ahead of Salah or Mane, Firmino. And they've still got Shaqiri there. Curtis Jones can play in that front three. Oxlade-Chamberlain can play in that front three. James Milner, he'll be a big miss if he's out for a prolonged spell because without Van Dijk and with Henderson in that back line, they lack that leadership in midfield that he would provide. Fabinho, well, he needs to be in this team because if Fabinho's in this team, you've either got that extra security in midfield from him playing there or he frees up Henderson to play in midfield. So he's one they need back as soon as possible. And Ben Davies, it's like, just a knock. Well, how much of it is a knock? We've not seen him yet. Is he just taking a bit more time to get up to speed with it and Jurgen Klopp's taking the pressure off him, or is it a genuine knock? But it's one where he's just a squad option anyway. We're not going to see more of him. Maybe after Kabak's error today, Klopp would want to throw him in for the next one. But then at the same time, if you're going to chop and change your defences again, more mistakes are going to creep in. So if you're saying Kabak is your starter now, you've got to keep faith with him. But this isn't just an overnight phenomenon. Liverpool have been dealt this all season long, as have a number of teams. Like one that springs to mind, Southampton. They're in great form until injuries rocked up. And then we saw them lose 9-0 to United a couple of weeks ago. It is affecting a lot of teams. And Liverpool have just got to deal with it and hope that they can take advantage and not fall too far back. When other teams slip up, they will have games where they can turn it on. Like I don't think anyone expects them to still be in this form come the end of the season. It's just a horrible rut. It has been something that has happened to him before. If fans want to think back to 2002, 2003, they were top of the league and then they just dropped like a stone. But there is time to turn it around. They've got the players there, the Premier League winners, the Champions League winners. Jurgen Klopp just needs to give them a good shake and find a way to turn it around.
Absolutely. Well, another hammer blow for Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool side today. Stay with us here on Blood Red. Thanks, Theo. Theo Squires joining us for the debrief today. We will have the press conferences from Brendan Rodgers and Jurgen Klopp coming up here shortly. And then a welcome release of the Champions League on Tuesday as Liverpool face RB Leipzig. Thanks for joining us here on the debrief. Bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.